5.7 million tons. That's what the Great Pyramid of Giza weighs. I mean, it's a number so massive, it's almost impossible to really wrap your head around, right? So let's try to put it into perspective.
Just take a look at this. You've got the world's tallest building, the Burj Khalifa, an absolute marvel of modern engineering, right? It weighs about 500,000 tons. The Great Pyramid, it's over 11 times heavier. It's literally a mountain of stone built by human hands.
And that, of course, leads to the big question. I mean, how on earth did they pull this off 4,600 years ago? We're talking about a time with no iron tools, not even the wheel for construction. It seems totally impossible.
But here's the thing, it wasn't impossible. And today, we're going to try and unlock the code of this ancient engineering marvel. We're going to dive deep and see just how a civilization managed to defy all the odds and build their very own stairway to eternity.
So here's what we've got lined up. First, we'll look at how a river created an empire. Then, we'll get into the obsession with immortality that was the real driving force. After that, we'll get into the nuts and bolts, the how-to of actually building it. And finally, we'll explore the mysteries that still have us scratching our heads today.
All right, so before we can even begin to understand how the pyramid was built, we've got to understand the people who built it and the river that shaped their entire world. It all, and I mean all of it, starts with the Nile.
So picture this, it's about 12,000 years ago. The Ice Age is ending, and the Sahara, which was once pretty green, starts turning into the massive desert we know today. What do? Well, people flock to the only reliable source of water around, the Nile. And the Nile was a gift. Every single year, it would flood its banks, leaving behind this incredibly rich, fertile soil. This, of course, led to farming, which then led to the invention of irrigation, and boom, by 3100 BCE, you have the unification of all of Egypt.
But, success often brings new problems, right? Suddenly you have all this extra grain sitting around, and those settled villages, they become a pretty tempting target for nomadic raiders. This constant threat created a need for protection, for organization, and naturally, for leaders to step up and take charge. And at the very top of that leadership structure was the pharaoh. Now, this is absolutely crucial to understand. The pharaoh wasn't just a king in the way we think of one. He was considered a living god on earth. His word wasn't just law, it was divine will. And that absolute, unquestionable authority, that's the key. That's how you get an entire nation to drop everything and work on one single colossal project for decades.
Okay, so we've got the society, the manpower, and the God King to lead them. But why build a pyramid? What was the motivation? Well, it was an idea more powerful than any army or any law. The quest for eternal life.
See, the ancient Egyptians believed that every person had two souls. You had the Ba, which was kind of like your personality, and it could travel up to the heavens. But then you had the Ka, your life force, and it was tied to your physical body. Here's the kicker. If your body was destroyed, your Ka would die, and your entire journey into the afterlife was over. Game over.
And that is exactly why they became masters of mummification. We're talking a super complex 70-day process. They'd remove the organs, completely dry out the body with a special salt called natron, and then wrap it up in hundreds of meters of linen. The whole point of all this was to make sure that body would last forever, to give the Ka a permanent home.
And as they got better at preserving the body, they also had to get better at protecting it. The tomb itself evolved. They started with these simple mud brick benches called mastabas. Then came the revolutionary step pyramid. They even had these, brilliant failures, like the bent pyramid, where they got the angle wrong halfway through. But every attempt was a lesson learned. Eventually, a pharaoh named Snefru finally cracked the code and built the very first true, smooth-sided pyramid. And that set the stage for his son, Khufu, to build the big one.
Which brings us, finally, to the Great Pyramid of Giza, the main event. So, how did they actually do it? This is where things get really interesting. We're going to get into the logistics, the labor, and a secret that was literally lost to time for thousands of years. First off, let's just try to get our heads around the sheer scale of this thing. The average stone block weighed 2.5 tons. That's about the same as an SUV. But the huge granite beams they used to build the king's chamber, some of those weighed up to 80 tons. That's like trying to move a dozen elephants at once.
So, that begs the question, right? How in the world do you move an 80-ton block of solid granite over 800 kilometers, all the way from the quarry in Aswan to the building site at Giza? For centuries, this was one of the biggest puzzles in all of archaeology.
Now, the obvious answer was, well, use the Nile River. But there was a huge problem with that theory. If you go to Giza today, the main channel of the Nile is miles away from the pyramids. It just didn't make sense. How could they possibly drag those giant stones all that way from the riverbank?
And then, incredibly, just in the last few years, science gave us the answer. Researchers found evidence of a long-lost 64-kilometer branch of the Nile. They've named it the Ahramet Branch. And get this, 4,500 years ago, this waterway flowed right to the base of the Giza Plateau. This discovery was an absolute game-changer. It meant they could float those 80-ton blocks on giant boats and deliver them just meters from the construction site. Just like that, the mystery was solved.
Okay, so what about the people who actually built it? First things first, forget everything you've seen in Hollywood movies. The idea of millions of slaves being whipped, it's just wrong. Archaeology tells a completely different story. We've actually found the remains of the workers' city, and it shows they were a skilled workforce of about 20 to 30,000 people. They were paid in food and beer, which was as good as cash. They got medical care for their injuries, and get this, when they died, they were buried with honor in tombs right next to the pyramids. This was a national project, a source of pride, not slave labor.
But here's the thing. Even with all these amazing discoveries, the pyramid is far from giving up all its secrets. In fact, let's look at some of the puzzles that science still can't quite figure out. Just think about the precision. The Great Pyramid is aligned to true north with an accuracy that is just mind-blowing, even for us today with all our technology. Then there's the math. The ratio of its height to its perimeter is almost a perfect approximation of pi. And the original white casing stones? They were polished and fitted together so perfectly you couldn't even slide a piece of paper between them. I mean, how did they achieve that level of perfection with copper chisels and stone hammers?
And believe it or not, the pyramid is still revealing new secrets. As recently as 2017, scientists used this wild technology involving cosmic ray imaging, and they found a massive, hidden chamber deep inside the structure. They call it the Big Void. It's about the size of an airplane. And the craziest part? We have absolutely no clue what it's for.
And then there's this really fascinating, though controversial, idea called the Orion correlation theory. It points out that the layout of the three main pyramids at Giza seems to perfectly mirror the three stars of Orion's belts in the night sky. Now, to the Egyptians, Orion was the celestial form of Osiris, the god of the afterlife. Most mainstream Egyptologists will tell you it's just a coincidence, but you have to admit it's a pretty cool idea, right? Like a map of the heavens on Earth, guiding the pharaoh's soul home.
So when it all comes down to it, maybe the real secret of the pyramids isn't about aliens or some magical lost technology. Maybe the true marvel, the real secret, is hidden in plain sight. It's the incredible power of human organization, of brilliant engineering, and of unshakable belief. The secret is in the sweat of 20,000 workers, the minds of their architects, and the faith of a nation building a stairway to eternity for their God-King.
And yet, the questions still linger. That big void is still a mystery. The precision is still hard to fathom. It makes you wonder, have we really solved the biggest puzzles of this incredible structure? Or is there a deeper secret still waiting to be discovered, buried somewhere beneath the sands? What do you think?